She sat in seat 1A, holding the power to bankrupt the man screaming in her face, yet she remained silent. To the flight crew and the arrogant passenger looming over her, Nia Cross was just an inconvenience, a woman who didn't look like she belonged in first class. They threatened her with security. They mocked her dignity. They forced her to the back of the plane. They had no idea that the merger they were flying to close, a massive $940 million deal, was with her company. One phone call was about to turn their celebration into a funeral for their careers. This is how the underdog bites back. The first-class lounge at JFK International Airport was a sanctuary of hushed tones, clinking crystal, and the scent of expensive espresso. For Nia Cross, it was simply a waiting room. Dressed in a beige cashmere tracksuit and wearing oversized sunglasses, she looked more like a tired graduate student than the CEO of Obsidian Logistics, the largest supply chain AI firm in North America. She sat in a corner wingback chair, tapping away on a tablet that controlled infrastructure across 3 continents. She wasn't trying to hide, but she certainly wasn't broadcasting her status. Nia had learned long ago that in the high-stakes world of corporate takeovers, anonymity was a weapon. If they didn't see you coming, they couldn't brace for impact. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from her chief financial officer, David. "The James Capital merger papers are ready for your signature in San Francisco. This deal is going to make history. $940 million on the table." Nia allowed herself a small smile. She typed back, "I'm boarding now. See you in 5 hours. Make sure the champagne is chilled." She packed her tablet into a worn leather tote bag, a bag that cost more than most cars but looked deceptively simple, and headed for the gate. She was flying commercial today because her private Gulfstream G850 was grounded for mandatory maintenance in Titerboro. It didn't bother her. She had booked seat 1A on Transcontinental Flight 402 to San Francisco. She just wanted to sleep. At the gate, the atmosphere was chaotic. A storm system over the Midwest had delayed incoming flights, and patience was wearing thin. Nia bypassed the groaning crowd at the economy lanes and approached the priority boarding lane. The gate agent, a woman with tired eyes and a name tag reading Patricia, didn't even look up as she scanned Nia's boarding pass. The machine beeped green. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Cross," Patricia mumbled. Nia walked down the jet bridge, the cool air of the tunnel hitting her face. She stepped onto the plane, greeted by the lead flight attendant, a sharp-featured man named Greg. He gave her a cursory glance, his eyes lingering for a fraction of a second too long on her casual attire before pointing to the left. "1A is right there," Greg said, his tone professional but devoid of warmth. Nia settled into the wide leather seat. It was the prime spot, maximum legroom, total privacy, and the first to deplane. She placed her bag in the overhead bin, sat down, and immediately put in her noise-cancelling earbuds. She closed her eyes, ready to drift off before takeoff. The piece lasted exactly 4 minutes. A commotion at the front of the plane jolted Nia from her light doze. She didn't open her eyes immediately, hoping the disturbance would pass. "I don't care what the computer says, Greg. I always sit in 1A. It's my lucky seat. I have a 9-figure deal to close in San Francisco, and I am not starting my day in row 2. The voice was loud, brash, and dripping with entitlement. Nia opened one eye. Standing in the aisle was a man who looked like a caricature of Wall Street wealth. He wore a bespoke navy suit that screamed Savile Row, a heavy gold watch that caught the cabin lights, and a scowl that could curdle milk. This was Tucker James. Nia's stomach tightened. She recognized him instantly. Tucker James, CEO of James Capital, the very man her company was acquiring, the man she was flying to meet to sign the $940 million contract. He had never met Nia in person. All their negotiations had been handled through lawyers and intermediaries, or over conference calls where Nia often kept her camera off to maintain a strategic advantage. To Tucker James, the CEO of Obsidian Logistics was just a signature on a page, a disembodied entity named N. Cross. He had no idea the woman he was glaring at was the one about to buy his family's legacy. "Mr. James, please," Greg, the flight attendant, pleaded softly. "The flight is fully booked. Seat 1A is assigned to another passenger. We have seat 2B open for you. It's an aisle seat, very comfortable." "I don't want 2B," Tucker barked, slapping his boarding pass against the bulkhead. "I booked first class. I am a Diamond Medallion member. I spend $500,000 a year with this airline. Do you know who I am?" Nia sighed, removing her earbuds. She watched as Tucker's eyes scanned the cabin, finally landing on her. His gaze turned dismissive instantly. He saw a black woman in a tracksuit, sitting in his seat, looking unbothered. He turned back to Greg, lowering his voice to a loud whisper that was clearly meant to be heard. "Are you telling me she is the reason I can't have my seat? Is she an upgrade? An employee flying non-rev?" Greg looked at Nia, then back at Tucker. The pressure of dealing with a VIP customer was clearly weighing on him. "Ms. Cross is a paying customer, Mr. James." Tucker scoffed, stepping closer to Nia's seat. He loomed over her, invading her personal space. "Excuse me, miss. I think there's been a mistake. You're in my seat." Nia looked up at him calmly. "My boarding pass says 1A. There is no mistake." "Look," Tucker said, pulling a money clip from his pocket. He peeled off 5 $100 bills. "Here's $500. Take the seat in row 2. Or better yet, go back to economy where you probably belong. I need this space to work." Nia didn't even look at the money. "I'm not interested in your money, sir. I'm interested in my sleep. Please step away." Tucker's face flushed a deep, angry red. He wasn't used to being told no, certainly not by someone he considered beneath him. He turned to Greg, snapping his fingers. "Get the captain. Now. I'm not flying in 2B while she sits here doing nothing." The situation escalated quickly. Within minutes, the pilot, Captain Reynolds, emerged from the cockpit. He was a tall man with silver hair and a weary expression. He looked at Tucker, then at Nia. "What seems to be the problem?" Reynolds asked. "The problem," Tucker spat, pointing a finger at Nia, "is that I am the most important passenger on this plane, and I am being denied the service I pay for. I need privacy to review confidential documents for a merger worth nearly $1 billion. I cannot do that in row 2 next to a stranger. This woman, she's obviously not flying for business. Ask her to move." Captain Reynolds turned to Nia. "Ma'am, would you be willing to swap seats to accommodate Mr. James? We can offer you a voucher for future travel." Nia straightened her posture. "Captain, I paid full fare for this ticket, specifically for the privacy of this bulkhead seat. I have work to do as well. I am declining the offer." Tucker let out a harsh laugh. "Work? What work? Posting on Instagram?" He turned to the captain, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. "Captain, look at her. She's probably an upgrade glitch. I'm telling you, if I don't get this seat, I'm pulling my corporate account from this airline. My firm flies 50 people a week with you. Do the math." The threat hung in the air. 50 executive flights a week was a massive revenue stream. Nia saw the calculation happening behind the captain's eyes. Corporate accounts meant job security. A single passenger in a tracksuit meant nothing. Greg, the flight attendant, leaned in. "Captain, Mr. James is a priority partner. We really need to keep him happy." The captain nodded slowly. He made his choice. He turned to Nia, his face hardening. "Ma'am, I'm afraid I'm going to have to insist. We have an overbooking situation, and we need to prioritize our diamond partners. I'm bumping you from first class." Nia blinked, stunned by the audacity. "Excuse me? You're bumping a full fare paying passenger for someone who arrived late just because he's throwing a tantrum?" "It's an operational decision," the captain said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "We have a seat for you in Economy Plus, row 12. If you refuse to take it, I will have to classify you as a disruptive passenger and have you removed from the aircraft by airport security." The cabin went silent. Passengers in rows 2 and 3 were craning their necks to watch. Tucker James crossed his arms, a smug, victorious grin plastered across his face. He checked his watch, as if this was all just a waste of his valuable time. Nia looked at the captain, then at Greg, and finally at Tucker. She felt the heat rising in her chest, the humiliation of being singled out, judged, and discarded. But then, the icy calm of the CEO took over. She realized something. If she was removed from the plane, she wouldn't make it to San Francisco. The merger contract had a "time is of the essence" clause. If she wasn't there to sign by 5 p.m., the deal could be renegotiated or cancelled. But more importantly, she realized Tucker had just handed her a loaded gun. He had just bullied the owner of the company he was trying to merge with. Nia slowly unbuckled her seatbelt. She stood up, smoothing down her tracksuit. She looked Tucker James dead in the eye. "You really want this seat that bad?" Nia asked, her voice dangerously low. "I don't want it. I earned it," Tucker sneered. "Now move!" Nia reached into the overhead bin and grabbed her bag. She turned to the captain. "I will move to row 12, but I want it on record that I was coerced under threat of removal." "Noted," the captain said dismissively, already turning back to the cockpit. As Nia brushed past Tucker, he leaned in, whispering in her ear, "Know your place, sweetheart. The back of the bus is that way." Nia stopped. She didn't look back. She just walked down the narrow aisle, past the curtain, into the economy cabin. She found seat 12C, squeezed in between a teenager with headphones and a sleeping man. She sat down, her heart pounding, not with fear, but with adrenaline. She pulled out her phone. The plane was still at the gate. The door hadn't closed yet. She had signal. She opened her secure messaging app and found the group chat labeled Obsidian Executive Board. She typed a single message. "Pause the James Capital liquidity transfer. Do not, I repeat, do not authorize the funds. Initiate a freeze on the acquisition. Draft a termination letter for the merger based on ethical misalignment. Wait for my signal." She hit send. At the front of the plane, she could hear Tucker laughing loudly, ordering a scotch before the wheels even moved. He thought he had won a seat. He had just lost his empire. The fasten seatbelt sign dinged off as Flight 402 leveled out at cruising altitude, soaring high above the storm clouds that had plagued New York. In the cramped quarters of row 12, the air was stagnant and warm. Nia Cross shifted her weight, trying to find a comfortable angle for her legs, which were pressed firmly against the seat in front of her. The teenager to her left had fallen asleep, his head dangerously close to resting on her shoulder, while the man to her right was aggressively typing on a laptop, his elbow periodically jabbing her in the ribs. It was a stark contrast to the experience Tucker James was having just 30 feet away. Through the gaps in the divider curtain, Nia could hear the clinking of silverware and the popping of a cork. The smell of warmed mixed nuts and filet mignon wafted back into the economy cabin, a cruel sensory taunt to the passengers who were being offered pretzels and half cans of soda. Nia didn't mind the lack of luxury. She had grown up sleeping on a pull-out couch in a one-bedroom apartment in Detroit. She knew how to endure discomfort. What burned in her chest was the disrespect. It wasn't just about the seat. It was the dismissal of her humanity, the assumption that her time, her comfort, and her status were automatically inferior to a man in a bespoke suit. She opened her laptop. The tray table was so small her computer barely fit, but she managed. She connected to the in-flight Wi-Fi, ignoring the exorbitant credit card charge. She had work to do. She pulled up the dossier on James Capital. For the past 6 months, her team at Obsidian Logistics had been vetting Tucker's firm. The financials were solid. They had a robust portfolio of shipping lanes and warehouses that Nia needed to expand her AI-driven supply chain network. The merger made perfect business sense. On paper, Tucker James was a visionary. But paper doesn't show character. Nia began to dig deeper, moving past the balance sheets and into the corporate bylaws and human resources archives that were part of the due diligence files. She searched for specific keywords: misconduct, harassment, discrimination, reputational risk. Usually these files were formalities. Today, they were ammunition. She found a clause in the acquisition agreement. Section 14.2, Material Adverse Change. It stated that the acquiring party, Obsidian, could unilaterally terminate the deal without penalty if the target company's leadership engaged in conduct that materially damaged the brand or public standing of the entity. Nia smirked. She opened a new document and began typing a detailed incident report of what had just occurred at the gate. She noted the time, the flight number, the names of the staff: Patricia, Greg, Captain Reynolds, and a verbatim transcript of Tucker's insults. "Know your place, sweetheart. The back of the bus is that way." She typed those words slowly, letting them sink in. Then she logged into the airline's internal feedback portal. She didn't just have a generic login. Obsidian Logistics was a corporate partner with the airline alliance. She filed a formal Code of Conduct complaint against Tucker James, flagging his profile. Meanwhile, at the front of the plane, Tucker was 3 scotches deep and holding court. Greg, the flight attendant who had helped move Nia, was refilling Tucker's glass. Tucker wasn't using headphones. He was talking loudly on a satellite phone call, a privilege usually reserved for emergencies, but one he was abusing to brag to his colleagues. "I'm telling you, Bennett, it's in the bag," Tucker roared, his voice carrying over the hum of the engines. "We sign at 5 p.m. This woman, this N. Cross, nobody knows much about her. She's probably some tech nerd who got lucky with an algorithm. I'm going to walk into that room, flash a smile, sign the papers, and walk out with a payout that will let me buy a private island." He took a swig of scotch. "Yeah, I'm flying first. Had to wrestle a seat away from some nobody at the gate. You know how it is. People think buying a ticket makes them royalty. I had to remind the captain who pays the bills." In row 12, Nia paused her typing. She could hear him. He was discussing the confidential merger on an open line, surrounded by strangers. That was a violation of the non-disclosure agreement, NDA. She pulled out her phone and quietly started recording audio. The quality was faint, but clear enough. "She's buying the company, but I'm keeping the board seat," Tucker continued, oblivious. "Once the ink is dry, I'm going to push her out. Give it 6 months. I'll turn the board against her. A woman running a logistics empire? Please. She won't have the stomach for the union negotiations. I'll take Obsidian back for pennies on the dollar." Nia's eyes went cold. This wasn't just arrogance anymore. It was a conspiracy. He was planning a hostile takeover from the inside after she paid him $940 million. She stopped the recording and saved the file as Evidence A MP3. A flight attendant appeared in the aisle with a cart. It wasn't Greg. It was a younger woman named Kira. She looked exhausted, her hair slightly frayed. She stopped at Nia's row. "Pretzels or cookies?" Kira asked, her voice flat. Nia looked up. Do you have any water? Just a full bottle, if possible. Kira hesitated. We usually only give cups in economy, but... She looked at Nia, then glanced toward the front of the plane, where Tucker was loudly berating Greg about the temperature of his nuts. Kira's expression softened. She reached into the bottom of her cart and pulled out a large bottle of Evian, the kind reserved for first class. Here, Kira whispered, slipping it to Nia. I saw what happened at the gate. I'm sorry. That guy is a nightmare. He's been snapping his fingers at us for 2 hours. Nia took the water, grateful. Thank you. What's your name? Kira. Kira, Nia said, looking at the young woman's name tag. You're doing a good job. Don't let him get to you. I'm just trying to make it to San Francisco, Kira sighed. He told Greg he was going to have him fired because the ice wasn't crushed. Can you believe that? People like him. They think they own the world. They think they do, Nia corrected softly. But the world has a funny way of correcting the balance. Kira gave a weak smile and moved the cart along. Nia opened the bottle of water and took a sip. She checked the time. 2 hours to landing. She had enough evidence to cancel the deal, but that wasn't enough. Canceling would just save her money. It wouldn't teach Tucker James a lesson. It wouldn't punish him for the way he treated Kira or Greg or Nia herself. She needed to humiliate him. She needed to let him think he had won, let him stand at the summit of his victory, and then push him off. She opened a secure chat with David, her CFO. David, change of plans. Do not cancel the meeting. Keep the freeze on the funds silent. Let the bank know that the transfer requires a biometric final authorization from me personally at the physical location. I want everyone in that boardroom, his lawyers, his board, and our legal team. And get me a hard copy of the airline's passenger manifest for this flight. David replied instantly. On it! Are you okay? You sound... focused. Nia typed back. I'm in row 12, David. I'm perfectly focused. The rest of the flight passed in a blur of strategy, while Tucker James slept off his scotch in the reclining leather bed of seat 1A, drooling slightly onto a pillow that cost more than Nia's shoes. Nia sat upright, wide awake, choreographing his destruction. The landing at San Francisco International Airport was smooth, but the atmosphere on the plane was tense. As soon as the seatbelt sign flickered off, Tucker James shot up from seat 1A. He grabbed his briefcase, pushed past Greg without a "thank you," and was the first person off the plane. Nia had to wait. She stood in the aisle, her back stiff, as row after row of passengers shuffled out. It took 20 minutes for her to exit the aircraft. By the time she reached the terminal, Tucker was long gone. She walked through the terminal, her leather tote bag heavy on her shoulder. She didn't head to the baggage claim. She walked straight to the VIP exit. Waiting at the curb wasn't a taxi or a rideshare. It was a convoy of 3 black Cadillac Escalades. Standing by the open door of the middle vehicle was a massive man in a dark suit, Marcus, her head of security. Note, user banned the name Marcus. Correction, Malik, her head of security. Malik spotted her and immediately stiffened, his eyes scanning the crowd. He saw her coming out of the general exit, not the VIP lounge, and his brow furrowed. Ms. Cross, Malik said, taking her bag. We were tracking the flight. Why were you in the back? The manifest said 1A. There was a reallocation of resources, Nia said cryptically, sliding into the plush back seat of the SUV. Get us to James Tower and call David. Tell him to meet us in the lobby with the paperwork. Yes, ma'am. The convoy tore away from the curb, merging aggressively into the San Francisco traffic. Inside the car, Nia didn't change clothes. She had considered it. She had a tailored suit hanging in the back of the SUV for emergencies. But she looked at her beige cashmere tracksuit, the same one Tucker had sneered at, and made a decision. She wasn't going to dress up for him. She was the one with the checkbook. He was the one selling. He needed to learn that power doesn't wear a uniform. 30 minutes later, the SUV pulled up to the gleaming glass skyscraper in the financial district, James Tower. It was an impressive building, a testament to old money and established power. Naya stepped out. The wind whipped her hair, but she didn't flinch. She walked into the lobby, flanked by Malik and 2 other security guards. David, her CFO, was waiting by the elevators. He was a sharp man with glasses and a nervous energy that balanced Naya's calm. "Nia," David said, handing her a thick folder. "They're all upstairs. The champagne is on ice. They think this is a coronation. Tucker arrived 20 minutes ago. He's exuberant." "I bet he is," Naya said, taking the folder. "Did you bring the audio equipment?" "Set up in the conference room as requested," David nodded. "Why do we need it?" "You'll see." They took the private executive elevator to the 40th floor. The doors slid open to reveal a lobby that smelled of mahogany and money. A receptionist looked up, startled by the group. "Can I help you?" she asked, eyeing Naya's casual clothes. "I'm here for the 5 p.m. closing," Naya said, not stopping. "Name?" "Nia Cross." The receptionist's eyes widened. She scrambled for the phone. "Oh, Ms. Cross, I didn't realize. They're waiting for you in the grand boardroom." Naya walked past the desk, down the long corridor, lined with portraits of James' ancestors. Old white men in suits stared down at her. She felt their judgment, the weight of centuries of exclusion. Today, that history ended. At the end of the hall, double oak doors stood closed. Malik stepped forward and pushed them open. The room was magnificent. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the Golden Gate Bridge. A massive oval table dominated the space. On one side sat the entire executive team of James Capital, and there, at the head of the table, sat Tucker James. He was laughing, a crystal flute of champagne already in his hand. He was telling a story to his lead counsel, a man named Bennett. "So I told the pilot, if she stays, I go." And just like that, poof, problem solved. "You have to assert dominance early, Bennett, or—" Tucker stopped. He saw the doors open. He saw the security guards. And then he saw her. The woman from the plane. The woman in the beige tracksuit. The woman from seat 12C. Tucker blinked, confused. He looked at the receptionist who had followed them in. "Kira, what is this? Security? Why is this passenger here? Did she follow me from the airport?" He stood up, his face flushing with anger. "Miss, I don't know how you got past the lobby, but this is a private meeting. You are trespassing. I suggest you leave before I have you arrested for stalking." Nia didn't speak. She walked calmly to the other end of the table, the empty seat reserved for the CEO of Obsidian Logistics. She pulled out the chair and sat down. The room went dead silent. The lawyers looked at Tucker, then at Nia, then back at Tucker. "Tucker," Bennett whispered urgently. "I don't care who she thinks she is," Tucker shouted, slamming his hand on the table. "Get her out of here. We are waiting for the CEO of Obsidian Logistics. Where is Ms. Cross?" Nia placed her leather tote bag on the table. She reached inside and pulled out a silver pen. She looked up, locking eyes with Tucker. "I am Nia Cross," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of a judge passing a sentence. Tucker froze. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked at David, who was standing behind Nia, nodding grimly. He looked at the paperwork in front of her. "No," Tucker stammered, a nervous laugh bubbling up. "No, that's impossible. You were in coach. You were wearing that." He gestured vaguely at her tracksuit. The CEO of a billion-dollar tech firm doesn't fly in row 12. I booked seat 1A, Nia said, her voice cutting through the air like a razor. But a disruptive passenger demanded it. I decided to accommodate him. I wanted to see how he treated people when he thought no one of consequence was watching. The color drained from Tucker's face. It happened instantly, like a curtain dropping. He sank back into his chair. The realization hit him like a physical blow. The insults, the bullying, the $500, the threats. He had bullied the buyer. Ms. Cross. Bennett, the lawyer, intervened, trying to salvage the situation. He stood up, smoothing his tie. I apologize on behalf of Mr. James. It's been a stressful day. Travel can be difficult. But surely, a minor misunderstanding over a seat assignment doesn't impact the viability of a $900 million merger. We have the contracts ready. The synergy between our companies is— Synergy, Nia interrupted. She tapped the folder David had given her. I'm glad you brought that up. She signaled to David. He connected his laptop to the room's projection system. On the flight, Nia said, addressing the room but keeping her eyes on Tucker. Mr. James was very vocal. He seemed to think the cabin was his private office. Unfortunately for him, he violated Section 9 of our non-disclosure agreement regarding the discussion of trade secrets in public spaces. David pressed a key. The audio recording from the plane began to play over the boardroom speakers. She's buying the company, but I'm keeping the board seat. Once the ink is dry, I'm going to push her out. A woman running a logistics empire? Please, I'll take Obsidian back for pennies on the dollar. Tucker's voice filled the room, loud, arrogant, and undeniably guilty. The James Capital board members stiffened. Bennett closed his eyes and pinched the bridge of his nose. The younger associates looked at the floor. Nia let the recording play until the end. Then she leaned forward. That wasn't a misunderstanding, Mr. James. That was a confession of conspiracy to commit corporate fraud and a hostile takeover. Tucker was shaking. He tried to speak, his voice trembling. Nia, Ms. Cross, please. It was locker room talk. I was blowing off steam. I didn't mean it. Look, we can renegotiate. I'll take a cut on the payout. I'll step down from the board. Just sign the deal. My family. This company is everything to us. We're leveraged to the hilt. If this deal doesn't close today, the bank calls our loans tomorrow. Nia looked at him. She saw the fear in his eyes. It was the same look he had given the captain when he demanded the seat. Desperation masked as power. But now, the mask was gone. You're leveraged, Nia asked, feigning surprise. So you need this money? Today? Yes, Tucker whispered. Please. Nia opened the contract folder. She picked up a pen. Tucker watched, hope flickering in his eyes. She was going to sign. Business was business after all. Nia uncapped the pen. She hovered it over the signature line. Then she slowly drew a large, thick X across the entire page. The deal is dead, Nia said. She pulled out her phone. And just so there's no confusion, she dialed a number on speakerphone. It rang once. Global Treasury, a voice answered. This is Nia Cross, authorization code Obsidian Alpha 9, referring to the pending transfer of $940 million to James Capital. Yes, Miss Cross, we are ready to execute on your command. Tucker stood up, reaching across the table. No, don't! Nia stared at him. Freeze the assets, cancel the transfer, terminate the acquisition immediately. Confirmed. The funds are frozen. Nia hung up. The room was silent, save for the hum of the air conditioning and the ragged breathing of Tucker James. You just bankrupted me, Tucker whispered, horrified. No, Tucker, Nia said. standing up and slinging her bag over her shoulder. "You bankrupted yourself. I just sat in the seat you assigned me." The thick black X that Nia Cross had drawn across the acquisition contract seemed to pulse on the mahogany table, a scar on the face of James Capital. For 10 agonizing seconds, the grand boardroom was silent. It was a vacuum of sound, the air sucked out by the sheer magnitude of what had just happened. Tucker James stared at the ruined paper. His brain, usually quick to calculate margins and leverage, was misfiring. He couldn't process the reality. He was still stuck in the delusion of 5 minutes ago, where he was the kingmaker, and she was the nobody from row 12. "You're bluffing," Tucker whispered, his voice trembling with a desperate, manic laugh. "You can't just walk in here and cancel $1 billion deal because of a seat assignment. This is business. We have a verbal agreement. We have—" The silence was shattered not by a voice, but by a sound far more terrifying to a room full of investment bankers. Buzz. It was Bennett's phone, vibrating violently against the hard wood of the table. Then, a second later, the phone of the chief operating officer lit up. Then the chairman's. Then Tucker's own device began to ring, a shrill, demanding tone that echoed off the glass walls. The news had traveled faster than the elevator Nia had taken to get here. In the high-frequency trading world, Obsidian Logistics flagging a transaction as terminated ethical misconduct was equivalent to shouting "fire" in a crowded theater. The algorithms had reacted before human hands could even touch a keyboard. Bennett, the lead attorney who had been smugly adjusting his tie moments ago, snatched up his phone. His face, already pale, turned the color of ash. He tapped the screen, scrolling through a barrage of alerts. "Mr. James?" Bennett's voice cracked. He looked up, terror in his eyes. "The ticker! Look at the ticker!" Tucker scrambled for the remote, fumbling to turn on the wall-mounted Bloomberg terminal. The screen flickered to life. A collective gasp went through the room. The graph for James Capital, VNC, looked like a cliff face. The line, usually a steady, jagged climb, had nose-dived vertically. "The stock is down 40%, Bennett recited, reading the nightmare aloud. "Trading has been halted by the SEC due to volatility. The algorithm picked up the fraud tag on the transfer cancellation. The liquidity dried up in seconds." 40%? Tucker screamed, spit flying from his mouth. "That's impossible. Fix it. Call the exchange. Tell them it's a mistake." "It's not a mistake, Tucker," Nia said. She was standing by the door, her hand resting casually on the brass handle. She hadn't moved to leave yet. She was watching the demolition she had engineered. The market hates uncertainty, and right now, the only thing they are certain of is that your funding is gone and your CEO is on tape, conspiring to defraud a partner. Tucker spun on her, his eyes wild with panic. "You did this! You sabotaged my company! I'll sue you for every dime you have! I'll bury you in litigation for the next 20 years! He looked to Bennett. "Sue her! Breach of contract! Defamation! Do something!" Bennett didn't move to open his laptop. Instead, he slowly closed it. The snap of the lid shutting was final. He began shoving papers into his briefcase with frantic, jerky movements. "Where are you going?" Tucker gasped, grabbing Bennett's sleeve. "We need to file an injunction." Bennett ripped his arm away, looking at Tucker with pure disgust. "I am terminating my representation, effective immediately. You can't leave me! I pay you a retainer!" "My firm represents business leaders, Tucker, not liabilities," Bennett hissed, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "And we certainly do not represent clients who are recorded conspiring to commit securities fraud. If that tape gets released to the U.S. Attorney's Office, you're looking at prison time. I'm not going down with this ship." Bennett grabbed his briefcase and stormed out the side door without looking back. The dominoes fell rapidly after that. The chairman of the board, an elderly man named Arthur, who had known Tucker's father, stood up slowly. He looked at the chaos on the screen, then at the weeping man at the head of the table. "You fool," Arthur spat, the venom in his voice startling everyone. "You had the golden ticket. All you had to do was be a decent human being for a 5-hour flight. You couldn't even manage that." "Arthur, please," Tucker begged, reaching out. "I can fix this. I'll apologize. I'll take a pay cut." "You're fired, Tucker," Arthur said coldly. "I'm calling an emergency board meeting in 10 minutes to vote on your removal. Don't bother attending." One by one, the executives filed out, fleeing the room as if Tucker were contagious. Within 2 minutes, the grand boardroom was empty, save for the hum of the air conditioning and the ragged, hyperventilating breaths of the man who had lost everything. Nia watched the final executive leave. She signaled to Malik. "We're done here." She turned and walked out into the corridor, her footsteps steady and calm. Tucker watched her go. The reality of his situation crashed down on him. The debt, the public humiliation, the end of his family's legacy. Panic, raw and animalistic, took over. He couldn't let her leave. If she left, it was really over. "Nia, wait!" He scrambled after them, tripping over his own chair, stumbling into the hallway. He ran past the stunned receptionist, his suit jacket flapping open, his tie askew. "Ms. Cross, please." He caught up to them near the elevators. He reached out, his hand grasping for her shoulder, desperate to physically stop the force of nature walking away from him. "You have to listen to Malik moved with the speed of a striking cobra. Before Tucker's fingers could graze Nia's jacket, the massive security chief stepped between them. He didn't strike Tucker, he simply intercepted him, placing a hand the size of a dinner plate against Tucker's chest and shoving him back. Tucker flew backward, slamming into the wall with a dull thud. He slid down to the floor, his legs giving out. He looked up, tears streaming down his face, a pathetic shadow of the tyrant from seat 1A. "Don't touch her," Malik growled, his voice vibrating in his chest. Tucker didn't try to stand. He sat on the expensive carpet, weeping openly. "Ms. Cross." "Nia, please, you don't understand. I'm leveraged to the hilt. I have 3 mortgages. I have loans against the stock. If this deal doesn't go through, I lose everything. My house, my cars. I'll be destitute. You can't do this to me over a seat." Nia stopped. She signaled the elevator, then turned slowly to look down at him. Her expression wasn't angry anymore. It was pitying. She remembered the way he had loomed over her on the plane. She remembered the smirk when he offered her $500 to go back to where she belonged. "You told me to know my place," Nia said softly, her voice carrying clearly in the silent hallway. Tucker sniffled, looking up at her with red, swollen eyes. "I know my place, Tucker," she continued. "It's here, making decisions that protect my company and my people. And now you know yours." The elevator doors chimed and slid open. Nia stepped inside, turning to face him one last time. "I suggest you check the job listings," she said, her tone devoid of malice, stating it as a simple fact. "I hear the airport is hiring baggage handlers. It's honest work, Tucker. You might learn something about carrying weight." The doors slid shut, severing the connection between the titan of logistics and the fallen king of capital. But the ordeal wasn't over. As Nia walked out of the elevators and into the lobby of James Tower, the world outside had caught up. Through the revolving glass doors, she could see the flashes. The paparazzi had arrived. The financial press, alerted by the trading halt and the rumors of a scandal, swarmed the entrance like sharks sensing blood. Malik spoke into his earpiece. "Crowd is heavy, Mom. Stay close." Nia put on her sunglasses. She didn't shrink back. She didn't look for a back exit. She pushed through the doors and stepped out into the San Francisco wind. The noise was deafening. "Ms. Cross! Ms. Cross! Over here! Why did you kill the deal? Sources say Tucker James committed fraud. Is it true? Did he assault you on the plane?" Microphones were thrust in her face. Cameras flashed blindingly, capturing the image of the woman in the beige tracksuit, standing amidst the wreckage of a corporate empire. Nia stopped at the curb as the black Escalade pulled up. She paused, turning to the sea of reporters. She lowered her sunglasses just an inch, her eyes sharp and unyielding. "Obsidian Logistics has high standards," she told the press, her voice steady enough to be picked up by every microphone. "We invest in assets, not liabilities. And today, I discovered that James Capital's leadership is a liability." She didn't wait for follow-up questions. Malik opened the door, and she slid into the cool, quiet interior of the SUV. "To the airport, Malik," she said, leaning back against the leather seat. "My jet is fixed." As the car pulled away, leaving the chaos of the flashing lights behind, Nia didn't look back at the tower. She looked forward. She had a company to run. And somewhere, in the back of her mind, she was already formulating a plan to buy the pieces of Tucker's empire once the price was right. 3 months had passed since the boardroom doors slammed shut on Tucker James's career. The seasons had turned, and the biting winds of a Chicago winter were beginning to thaw, much like the frozen assets of the once mighty James Capital. But for Tucker, the winter had never ended. The collapse of his empire had been spectacular, a slow-motion train wreck broadcast across every financial news network in the country. It wasn't just a bankruptcy, it was a dissection. Without the influx of cash from Obsidian Logistics, the creditors had descended like wolves. The glass tower in San Francisco was foreclosed upon within weeks. The fleet of luxury cars was auctioned off on a rainy Tuesday to pay legal fees. Tucker James, the man who had claimed he would buy Obsidian for pennies, had been sued by his own shareholders, ousted by his board, and stripped of every title he possessed. Nia Cross stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of her corner office in Chicago, watching the tiny cars move like ants along the Lakeshore Drive. The silence in her office was heavy, not with tension, but with the serene atmosphere of absolute victory. Her intercom buzzed, cutting through the quiet. "Ms. Cross, David is here with the final acquisition papers." "Send him in," Nia said, turning away from the view. David walked in, a spring in his step that hadn't been there 3 months ago. He carried a single, thin blue folder. He placed it gently on Nia's desk, treating it with the reverence one might show a religious artifact. "It's done," David said, his grin unable to be contained. The bankruptcy court just stamped the final approval. The transfer of title is complete. Nia ran her hand over the folder. "We have everything?" "Everything," David confirmed. "We acquired the Trans-Pacific shipping lanes, the entire portfolio of automated warehouses, and the proprietary logistics software. It's all ours." "And the final price tag?" Nia asked, though she already knew the answer. She just wanted to hear it said aloud. David chuckled, shaking his head in disbelief. Because the company was in free fall, and because the reputational damage was so severe that no other buyers would touch it, we paid $60 million. Nia let out a low, satisfied laugh. It wasn't a sound of malice, but of vindication. She sat down in her leather chair, the same chair she had earned through grit and brilliance, not inheritance. "Do the math, David," she murmured. "We were prepared to pay $940 million. Instead, we paid 60. That's a discount of roughly 94%, David said. You saved the company nearly $1 billion by sitting in economy class." Tucker was right about one thing, Nia mused, her eyes drifting back to the window. He told his lawyer he would buy the company back for pennies on the dollar. He just got the players wrong. He provided the pennies, I provided the power. David nodded, his expression turning serious. There's one other matter to settle. You asked me to handle some specific recruitment for the executive aviation fleet. We found her. Naya's expression softened. Kira. Yes. Kira Jenkins. She resigned from Transcontinental Airlines 2 weeks after your flight. According to her file, she cited hostile work environment and stress as the reasons. She's been working double shifts at a diner in the suburbs just to make rent. She's in the waiting room now. She thinks she's interviewing for a receptionist position, correct? That's what we told her, David confirmed. Send her in. A moment later, the heavy oak doors creaked open. Kira walked in, looking small in the cavernous office. She was wearing a polyester suit that was clearly bought from a discount rack, and she clutched a worn leather portfolio to her chest like a shield. Her eyes darted around the room, taking in the modern art, the expansive view, and the intimidating aura of wealth. She didn't look at Naya's face immediately. She was too busy looking at the floor, terrified of making a mistake. "Good afternoon, Ms. Jenkins," Naya said, her voice warm and steady. "Please take a seat." Kira looked up, a polite, rehearsed smile on her face. "Thank you so much for seeing me. The words died in her throat. Kira froze, her hand flying to her mouth. She stared at the woman behind the desk, the woman in the sharp, tailored blazer who radiated authority. But beneath the power suit, Kira recognized the tired traveler in the beige tracksuit. She recognized the eyes of the woman she had slipped a bottle of water to in row 12. "You," Kira whispered, her voice trembling. "You're the lady from the plane. The one with the water." Nia stood up and walked around the desk, extending a hand. "I am. I'm Nia Cross." Kira took the hand, her grip weak with shock. I saw you on the news. They said you were the billionaire who took down Tucker James. I had no idea. I just thought you were a student or something." "That was the point," Naya said gently, gesturing for Kira to sit. "People show you who they really are when they think you have no power. Tucker James showed me his character. And you, Kira, you showed me yours." Kira sat on the edge of the chair, tears welling in her eyes. "I just gave you a bottle of water, Ms. Cross. It wasn't a big deal." "It was everything," Naya corrected firmly. "In a moment where I was being humiliated, where I was treated as invisible and unworthy, you saw me. You risked your job, you defied a VIP passenger, and you showed kindness to a stranger in the cheap seats. That is a rare currency in my world. I can teach anyone to manage a schedule or balance a budget. I cannot teach integrity." Nia picked up a document from her desk and slid it across to Kira. "I'm not hiring a receptionist today, Kira." Kira looked down at the paper. Her eyes widened as she read the title at the top. Director of Hospitality, Executive Aviation Fleet. "I need someone to manage the service standards for my private jets," Naya explained. "You would be in charge of the cabin crews, the menus, the client experience. You would travel with my executive team. No more rude passengers snapping their fingers at you. No more fighting for ice. You run the cabin." Kira's eyes scanned further down the page, landing on the salary figure. She gasped, a jagged sound in the quiet room. This is triple what I was making at the airline. Consider it back pay for having to deal with men like Tucker James." Naya smiled. "Do you accept?" "Yes," Kira breathed, wiping a tear from her cheek. "Yes, of course. Thank you. I won't let you down." "I know you won't," Naya said. She leaned back against her desk, crossing her arms. "But there is one condition to your employment." Kira straightened up, ready for anything. "Anything. Just name it." "We have a new employee starting today at the main hangar," Naya said, her voice turning cryptic. "He's part of a special work rehabilitation program I sponsor for executives who have lost their way. It's a janitorial role. I need you to supervise his work today. Make sure he understands that the details matter, specifically the bathrooms." Kira looked confused for a moment. "A janitor? You want the director of hospitality to supervise a janitor?" "Trust me," Naya said. "You're the only person for the job. Come with me." The main hangar of Obsidian Logistics was a cathedral of aviation. The polished concrete floors gleamed under the high-intensity lights, reflecting the sleek, metallic curve of Naya's Gulfstream G650. The air smelled faintly of jet fuel and expensive leather. Nia walked across the hangar floor, her heels clicking rhythmically, with Kira trailing a step behind her. In the far corner, near the maintenance bay, a figure was working. He was wearing a grey, shapeless jumpsuit that hung loosely on his frame. He was pushing a mop back and forth with a slow, defeated rhythm. As they got closer, the man stopped. He heard the footsteps. He leaned on the mop handle and wiped sweat from his forehead with a rag. He looked older than he had 3 months ago. His hair, once perfectly coiffed, was thinning and unkempt. The arrogance that had defined his posture was gone, replaced by a permanent slump of shame. It was Tucker James. Kira stopped walking. She audibly inhaled, her hand clutching her chest. "Tucker?" Tucker flinched at the sound of his name. He squinted against the hangar lights, his eyes focusing on the 2 women approaching him. He saw Nia Cross, the architect of his destruction, looking impeccable and untouchable. And then he saw the woman next to her. He blinked, recognition dawning slowly. It was the flight attendant, the one he had threatened to fire because the ice wasn't crushed, the one he had treated like furniture. Now she was standing in a tailored suit, flanking the owner of the company, while he stood in a jumpsuit holding a bucket of dirty water. Tucker's face flushed a deep, burning crimson. He opened his mouth to speak, perhaps to beg, perhaps to apologize, but no words came out. The humiliation was total. It was a physical weight that seemed to crush the air out of his lungs. "Mr. James," Nia said, her voice echoing slightly in the vast space. "I believe you missed a spot." She pointed to a scuff mark near his left boot. Tucker looked down at the floor, then back up at them. His eyes met Kira's. For the first time in his life, he had to look up to the help. Kira didn't scoff. She didn't laugh. She simply looked at him with a mix of pity and resolve. She stepped forward, her voice steady. "The lavatory on the jet needs to be restocked before the flight to Tokyo, Tucker," Kira said, "and make sure the mirrors are streak-free. We have VIPs on board today." Tucker swallowed hard. His knuckles turned white as he gripped the mop handle. He looked at Nia, waiting for the final blow, the final insult. But Nia didn't say anything else. She didn't need to. The universe had balanced the scales with terrifying precision. "Yes, Mom," Tucker whispered, his voice cracking. He dipped the mop back into the grey water and bowed his head, returning to the work he was now destined for. Nia turned to Kira. "Ready for takeoff?" "Ready," Kira said, a genuine smile breaking through. They walked toward the waiting jet, leaving the man who thought he owned the world to scrub the floor beneath their feet. Nia didn't look back. She climbed the stairs to the cabin, took her seat in 1A, and finally, truly, closed her eyes to rest. Tucker James thought his net worth gave him the right to treat people like dirt. He learned the hard way that true power isn't about the seat you sit in. It's about how you treat the people standing in the aisle. Nia Cross didn't just win. She rewrote the rules, proving that karma doesn't just knock. Sometimes it buys the whole building. If you enjoyed this story of massive karma and justice, please destroy that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that you never know who you're talking to.